an opportunity to ride that bike or that tricycle as well. What I'd like to do now is actually introduce our guest speaker. He's known as a favorite among sales professionals, corporate audiences, and association and event planners. He's spoken and conducted training sessions across North America, the Caribbean, and Europe. A former stand-up comedian, and I'm sure that he's brought to us some of his humor today to this rally. Let's give Dave a warm, round welcome at UPS.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everyone here, for coming down here this morning. I appreciate this opportunity to be here with you. It is great for me to be in what a beautiful facility. I hope you realize how lucky you are to have this type of a place to have your meetings. This really is wonderful. I live in Johns Creek, just up the road here. Do we have any fellow Johns Creek folks? Couple all the way in the back. Yeah, there we go. Way up in North Fulton County. And I'm excited to be here. I have lived there for the past 23 years with my wife and her 6 cats. 3 boys, Max, Madison, and Mimosa, and 3 girls, Chelsea, Caitlin, and Angel. And I also have 2 daughters, Fluffy and Snowball. Actually, Fluffy is my daughter, Katie. She's going into the 4th grade. And Snowball is my daughter, Amanda, who is a senior at the University of Alabama. Roll Tide, y'all. There you go. And it is great being there and living with them and having my girls to be there with me. The cats really provide a lot of joy and enjoyment in our lives. One of our cats, Mimosa, is an orange tabby, and he weighs 22 pounds. Yeah, when Katie was first born, I went into her bedroom, and there was Mimosa on her changing table with all 4 paws up in the air. And I couldn't decide if that was a good place to sleep or if he had just given up on litter and wanted to be diapered. I didn't really know what was happening there. And then we had Angel, our all-white cat. She had an experience with us when we put Katie in her bedroom for the first time as a little baby, about 3 months old. And the doctors will tell you that first night you can't go in there, or the baby will never break that bond of sleeping in their parents' room. But we were able to listen to her on a baby monitor in our bedroom, sitting on the nightstand. And out of this monitor was just these screams and yelling coming. And as a parent, if you've ever experienced that, it just tears your heart out. Until I noticed Angel, our all-white cat, sitting in front of the baby monitor, staring at it very intently. And then she'd look up at me. And then she'd look back at the baby monitor. And then she'd look up at me. And this went on for about a half an hour until finally she looked at the baby monitor and then up at me and then back down again, and then she said, "That is the worst radio program I have ever heard." I would tell you a little bit more about myself to give you an idea of who I am, Dave Kelly. I've been a professional speaker for 7 years. I've had a chance to travel around the country, the Caribbean. I've spoken professionally in 38 different states, so I'm looking forward to going to a few more and other places around the world. It's fun, it's exciting, it's something that I love to do. I get a chance to travel and see all kinds of different places, meet all kinds of different people. I speak for colleges, over 110 so far, and corporate events. I am the former founder and owner of a multi-state mortgage company. I was in the mortgage business for over 20 years. 10 of those years I had my own company with offices in Alabama and Georgia and North and South Carolina. 9 of those years I had a business partner until we split up. It was over a business disagreement. He was stealing from me and I didn't want him to. But about a year before we split up, he had made a comment to me about how he felt he'd had a good career in the mortgage business. And I said, "Career? This isn't my career. This is just a job. It's what I do to make a living." And then I realized I'd been doing it for a long time at that point, and I was a mortgage guy. And I didn't want to do that. I mean, I had gone to college and majored in theater and also majored in political science and had a minor in religion. Don't let anybody do that. There's no call for that out in the world. But I always envisioned myself being in front of audiences, and so I thought, how can I do that? And I found my way into professional speaking. In fact, part of how I got there was because of my involvement with Kiwanis. I'm a member of the Galleria Northwest Kiwanis Club. Any fellow Kiwanians here in the room? No? All right. Rotarians here in the room? Okay, well then we're gonna keep going. I'm sure you do good things in other ways. But Kiwanis is a great group, and it gave me a chance to learn how to speak in front of audiences, to do presentations, to do workshops. I remember one time, really early on, where I had to face an audience, and I didn't know what to expect. I looked in the room, and they were all sitting there, and they were fidgeting, and they were poking each other, and they were talking amongst themselves, and I just really feel myself getting nervous going in front of this audience, and wondering, are they going to like me? Are they going to laugh? Are they going to enjoy my stories? And then all of a sudden I heard from inside the room, and now, boys and girls, Mr. Kelly. And I went into the room to face the most hostile of audiences possible, 5-year-olds. I was there to read to a kindergarten class, and it was my first time ever. And as I walked into the room, there were audible gasps at my stature from these little people sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor in front of me. And I went to what is known as the reader's chair in the middle of the room and sat down. And I had with me 3 books, all Dr. Seuss, because I love Dr. Seuss and I love reading those to my girls. And I thought, I hope they like Dr. Seuss, and we'll see how this goes. And so I looked at them and I said, hi, boys and girls, I'm Mr. Kelly, and I'm here to read to you today from the Kiwanis Club. And I brought 3 Dr. Seuss books. Does anybody like Dr. Seuss? And a whole bunch of hands went up. And then some went back down, and then some went up again a little bit, and then back down again. And so I thought, okay, it seems like Dr. Seuss might be a good bet. And so then there was one little girl on the front row, she had her hand still up, and I said, yes, sweetie, do you have a question? And she says, I like Cat in the Hat. I hadn't brought Cat in the Hat that day, so I thought I might be in trouble. And then there was a little boy sitting next to her wearing a Deion Sanders jersey from when he played with the Falcons, and he had his hand up, and I said, do you have a question? And he said, we have 3 cats. I looked over at the teacher for help, but she just was sitting there at her desk with her face buried in her hands. And I knew I was on my own. So I started reading to them. I started reading, and I read, Sam I Am. I am Sam. Sam I Am. And then the part where the other guy gets in, he goes, that's Sam I Am, that's Sam I Am. I do not like that Sam I Am. Total silence and no fidgeting from the audience. And I'm like, cool, I have their attention. And I read on a little further, and we talked about eating green eggs and ham and eating them in a house with a mouse. And then to the point where the guy says, who's never named actually in the story, but the guy says, I would not eat them here or there, I would not eat them. And before I could say it, all the kids yelled out, anywhere. As a speaker, you love audience participation. And so I was excited to have their involvement. And then I got to the next line, and he says, I do not like them, Sam I Am. And when I said the Sam I Am part, they shouted again. And this is like, great, I have their attention. And I kept going, and they were shouting louder and louder until the teacher next door came over, and she said, I need you to keep quiet. And I said, I can't stop now, I'm on a roll, we gotta keep going. And so we read the story, and we got all the way through where Sam finally said, you know what, I like them, I will eat them, thank you, Sam I Am. And it was a great time, and I read some more stories to them that day, and I've been going back ever since, and that was 17 years ago. And it's something that I love to do, is to read to them. But you know, I was afraid going in there. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea how they were gonna respond. And I was a little bit like the guy in the story of like, I don't like green eggs and ham. I don't like being around little kids. I don't like being around kindergartners, until I found out I loved it. And that's something that I continue to do to this day. Now, something else that I love are the Green Bay Packers. We've got a fellow Packer fan down here, someone from Wisconsin. I've been a Packer fan since I was 6 years old. I've been an owner since I was 36, because the Packers are, this is me at age 13 with my prized Packer sweatshirt that I got for Christmas that year. And most recently, I made a trip up to Green Bay. I got a chance to be in front of Lambeau Field. Now the thing is, if you're going to be a champion, you have to act like a champion. Not only that, you have to dress like one too. And we as the Packers are the champion. Now where are the Falcons fans in the room? Raise your hand. If I might remind the Falcons fans about January, maybe that's why not everybody raised their hand. You know, the Packers are a great story because they are the only publicly owned franchise in all of professional sports. Literally, people like me are the owners of the team. And they go back to the 1920s when a guy named Curly Lambeau, who had played for Knute Rockne at Notre Dame, decided to form a football team in Green Bay with the help of the local newspaper. And he recruited a local packing plant called the Indian Packing Company, and they were the sponsors. Now you see they have Acme Packers on their shirts, their jerseys. I've never seen how Indian Packing became Acme Packing, but that was the uniforms that they wore in the early days. And the Packers joined the NFL in 1921, the second year of the league, and since that time, they have won more championships than anybody in professional football, 13 of them. And it has been a great story that the smallest market in all of professional sports, Green Bay, Wisconsin, which has only a little more than 100,000 people, has got so many championships that it is now known as Titletown. And not only that, the trophy that they give out for that championship is named after their iconic coach, Vince Lombardi. But it wasn't always that great of a story, at least in the beginning. I mean, the team was started literally on a wing and a prayer by Curly Lambeau and the Press-Gazette there in Green Bay. And only a couple of years in, the team was about ready to fold. And this great story never would have happened, except there were some people in Green Bay who took charge. They formed the Green Bay Football Corporation in 1924, and they sold stock in the team. And that's how the team became publicly owned. They didn't want to lose their team and their place in the National Football League. And the team went on from there and took that money and was able to recruit players. You didn't have the formalities of the draft that you have today, and they were able to get some really good players, and they won 3 straight championships in the late 20s and the early 30s. And then another issue came up with money in the mid-30s, so they held another stock sale. The people of Green Bay took charge of this team. And they said, we want to keep this team and we're going to keep it solvent. And they continued to go and they continued to grow. 1950 came along and again, financial issues occurred and they decided that they needed to sell more stock in order to keep this team afloat. And the team continued to grow and flourish. And then of course the Lombardi years came and they had the championships and great success. And the team continued to do well, especially in the 1990s after they brought in a quarterback who I believe started here in Atlanta. Some of you might remember number 4, who right now for many Packers fans, he is he whose name will not be mentioned, at least for a few more years. We're going to wait and make sure he's really retired this time. And they won a championship in '96. They wanted to build a new stadium. There was a lot of talk, because this was a time when teams were building new stadiums to get more revenue with the electronics and things like that. And they said, well, let's build a new stadium so we can get more revenue for the Packers. And the city of Green Bay, the people of Brown County, the people of Wisconsin, and Packer fans everywhere said, no, Lambeau Field is our home. If we're going to do anything, let's renovate that. And the team said, we will do that. They had a number of measures in which they took to be able to raise the money. And one of those was to sell stock in the team one more time, the last time they've done it in 1997. And when I say that I am an owner, I really, truly am, and I can prove it, because I have my stock certificate here with me today. So if you'd like to see what a stock certificate in a National Football League team looks like,